What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit about the idea that there is no neutral thought. Even though creation in itself a lot of times can be looked at as neutral, our thinking in relationship to the outer events are either cursings or blessings. And it might be a kind of a bold claim, but as you start to unpack this narratives and the stories within yourself in relationship to whatever's going on, you can start to see how a lot of our thinking can either stem from fear or its opposite, love. And so whenever you're in these kinds of like situations where you're telling yourself mostly fearful things, even you can look at fear as being a spectrum where it's just like you have a low grade like worry, like you might say something stupid compared to like, oh, I'm at gunpoint with a psychopath. There's an obvious difference in the level of fear, but ultimately the low grade fear is still an energy sucking thing that can completely be let go of. And as you start to do that, you start to, I know it in my own self, I've been kind of on this weird thing in the past few days, really. I've been, it's springtime where I live, and there's like all this, flowers blooming, and it smells good in the air. The temperature is like ideal for me. The breeze is nice. Everything's like alive, and there's an awesome energy to the environment. And like with that, I was like riding my bike home from I'm flipping a house at the moment, and like there was like a period of the day, most of the day, where it's just like I don't have any type of problem whatsoever. I wasn't thinking about negative things. I wasn't really like worried about how things were unfolding with the house I'm flipping. There wasn't concern about like any of these things. And it was like such a weird state of mind and state of being where it's just like even those low grade thoughts of just like, oh, well, what if this happens? What if I lose this? What if someone breaks in and steals my tools? What if all these kind of low grade anxieties, these imaginings of like the undesirable, even subtly undesirable. I realized at that point is like, if I can be thinking anything and impressing that into the field of awareness, and as I do that, my perception immediately can start to shift as I realize that, how powerful the thinking actually is, how it's like getting out of like the instant manifestation, like, like, oh, I need this to happen to soothe me right away, that instant gratification, that instant type of thing, compared to more obvious things in creation where it's more of a delay. Like working out, for example, it's like what you're doing is going to have a benefit. When exactly that fucking transformation happens is really hard to pinpoint. Just in my own experience, it's like I've lost like 35 pounds, and there's like not really like a spot, that you can point to as like that was the day, everything changed. It just kind of just fuzzily happens, and then you look back and it's just like, I'm already made it. I'm here. I did it. I achieved my goal. And that's a big part of like just achieving goals and like not missing the mark. And it's an important concept to kind of get out of this being triggered, about like missing the mark or sinning is like the big religious word for it. But you can look at any of those types of things as like not reaching your ideal. The term sinning in itself is an archery term from what I've like come to discover, and it basically is like alluding to you're trying to hit a bullseye. Missing the mark is just like you're trying to do it, you let go, and then you don't even hit the target. And it's like that with everything, because we're always manifesting something either desirably or undesirably. And when it comes to our thinking about certain things, we can really miss the mark in terms of like I could be telling myself any amazing thing right now, but yet I'm telling myself worst case scenarios, fear, what I don't want. And I was like kind of alluding to in the past video how you can start to transmute a lot of that. A lot of it is just by consciously recognizing it. To be like, oh wait, why am I just like sitting here in the present moment telling myself like the undesirable, whatever, fill in the blank, something I'm worried about happening, something I'm trying to like maybe react to, or like, oh, I just heard something on the news today. It's like I don't even watch the news, but it penetrated my awareness, so it must be a big deal. It's like, what's going on? And then you start fixating on these undesirable situations, these undesirable narratives, these undesirable stories even. Catching that is a game changer for one, because then you can become like aware of what you're thinking and start to choose differently. Realizing that I was thinking a thought of fear. If I could experience anything in creation right now, would I be telling myself this? And I start to use those things as like a buffet, not so much like, oh, I just had a fearful thought, I need to instantly react to it, I can't be thinking this way, and then becoming scared of your own thinking, which is something that can start to happen, especially as you realize like the things that you're planting undesirably into the field of awareness will unconsciously manifest just the same as the blessings. And so part of like this discovery is like, oh, just by creating all these things you don't want all the time, by your thinking and your state of mind and experiencing them and over again, it becomes really, really, really stupid to continuously do that when you could be thinking the exact opposite and living in more harmony each day. And that's a big game changer when you realize that there is no errant thought. Creation itself is a kind of an illusionary in the sense that whatever your inner world is going to be externalized into the events of your life, whether that's your marriage, your relationships in general with like friends, family, kids, whatever, your business, your money situation, your health. It's all one thing. It might appear in different phases and in different ways, but ultimately all these relationships help us to evolve our consciousness more towards love if we decide to experience reality in that way. It's all a choice. You can choose, but the problem is most people are unconsciously just being programmed. A lot of that's just from childhood and just not stepping into true adulthood where it's like, I am not programmed by the outer world. My inner world in this connection with infinite intelligence is helping guide me in my decision making and the steps I'm moving forward, the way I'm thinking about reality, and ultimately bringing a lot of the ideas of this future heaven into a present reality. And that's really embodying the law of assumption to the furthest degree. And I think that's really important. A lot of people check their own logic traps by, okay, yes, there's outliers in lots of situations. Yes, there's always like an exception to the rule in a lot of different cases. We can all see those examples if we're running a business. It's like, normally I don't hire people that do this, but this person seems like they're making a change, so I'll give them a shot. A lot of these things are really basic, but framing it in a way that is actually renewing to the mind is important because as you realize that creation is going to perfectly mirror the inner world, well, then the inner world is not so much neutral in the sense that you could be thinking fear, which is ultimately an illusion because the root of fear in itself is that you're separate from God, separate from the events of your life, separate from all these forces that are going on in creation. Believing that things are random, that you're a victim, that you start filling in the blanks, that you can suffer, that because all these are and that's really triggering for a lot of people that have been in a lot of suffering. It's like, well, Mike, this happened, this happened, this happened. It's like, yeah, no wonder, because you've been afraid of these things happening. You think it's going to be a real problem. You expect it on some level, and it's not surprising when you marry those thoughts into the field of awareness that's waiting to activate on your thoughts. And as soon as you throw those thoughts into the field, it like ripples out and then comes back. Reaping and sowing, correspondence. And so any type of like weird shit that's confronting you in the present moment, that's like an obvious like, well, that's reinforcing doubt. That's reinforcing fear. That's reinforcing a limiting belief. I'm seeing it, but and that's where the spiritual mind takes over from the physical mind, because the physical mind is convinced by the evidences of the senses, and because of that is constantly doubling down on the same error over and over and over again. And until you catch that pattern, it's going to continue to perpetuate because things don't stay stagnant. And that's another really important aspect of creation to look at, is that things that aren't moving stagnate and decay. You could look at that with like water, for example. A pool of festering water doesn't start festering until it's just sitting. Your body's the same way. If you're not using it, you lose it. In a lot of different ways. I noticed that with my hip, when I was like starting to go on a path of decay, decline, bullshit, drama, worse and worse. Well, it started with like a pain in the left side, then it migrated, then it's like you baby it, then the muscles start to fucking break down, then it gets harder to stretch, and then you start losing mobility, and then next thing you know, it's affecting your back, now it's affecting the other leg, now it's affecting the whole harmony of your body, and it's just spirals. And you can look biblically at some of these things of like if you're not with me, you're against me type thing. There is not this middle ground where it's like hot and cold. The so-called middle lukewarm gets spit out because it's not real. You're either in cursing or blessing. There's no in between. Blessing or curse. Consciously or unconsciously choosing is all we're doing. Ever. That's the part of the gift of free will, in my opinion, is that you've been given so much freedom of choice that you can actually choose to experience the undesirable. And to what extent that you want to do that is really up to you. How long do you feel like suffering? How long do you feel like experiencing the undesirable? How long do you feel like missing the mark all the time? It's in those things. It's like, do you want to keep failing at everything you're doing over and over again? It's like, get the idea of this future heaven and future hell out of your brain, because it's only ever now. It's like either you are experiencing heaven, connecting with God, connecting with joy, peace, understanding, harmony, all of these things that we're actually trying to do, even though the world is doing it opposite and counterproductive and experiencing more and more of the undesirable because they don't know who they are in Christ. And by that, they don't take responsibility and ownership for their inner world, and because of that, they empower a they that they start to idolize, make a god out of these people, put them on a pedestal, give them all their power, obey them like a slave. And that's just kind of the nature of the world. It's kind of a nature of just the thinking of separation and the ego mind, which is not something to battle and resist either. It's in loving yourself and loving that ego when it comes in. It's easy to start to make an egregore of it, or look at it as like a demonic thing, which is ultimately, I feel like, a big mistake. And this is from experience of someone who's battled that, and made it worse, strengthened it, hated it, wanted to kill it, all these kinds of things. Well, it only strengthens it. It's what it wants. And simultaneously, as you're doing these grievance thoughts, these attack thoughts, all of this bullshit, you're strengthening it and you're diminishing your own energy, because you're creating a us versus them, a separation, when the reality is everything's connected. Realizing that everything's connected, including the events of your life, and it's all reflecting what you feel worthy of, what you can handle without doubt, guilt, shame, because every thought externalizes. Thoughts of fear, thoughts of guilt, thoughts of envy, all of these things that we're kind of led to let go of. If you're going to kind of follow what the Bible says as a guide to the spiritual, the metaphysical, it's like, it doesn't make sense to us that our nature is so warlike and aggressive and whatever, yet then you read the Bible, it's like every single thing that I feel like I'm programmed to do is like offensive to God. That doesn't make any sense. But when you realize that part of like the fundamental error is thinking that God is outside of you in space somewhere, like sitting in a cloud judging you, that is like part of the fundamental error, because you are not separate from infinite intelligence. Infinite intelligence is one with your consciousness. We call it the subconscious, but the words are not important. It's the understanding that's important, and the understanding is what you start to be revealed within you. That's ultimately the guide is within. So it's like, if you get stuck in these patterns of constantly, I put this person on a pedestal and I really want to worship them like a god, but they just said something that I don't resonate with, and now I feel scared and I want to attack them. It's like, you got to put people from up here to down here, in the sense that we're all the same in what we're capable of doing, by realizing that everything that anybody else is doing is a demonstration of this one power. That's it. There's not two powers, there's one power. And that's like one of the important things to realize when it comes to understanding that there is not a neutral thought. It's either a thought of love or a thought of fear. And if it's a thought of fear, then it's a good sign that you're listening to your old ego, which is just the way of thinking that you had when you thought God was outside of you. You didn't realize that your mind had, this connection, this correspondence, But now that you do know that, then you can start to actually embody who you are in Christ, the new you. Everything is new. Everything going on in your life is new based on your new understanding of reality. Realizing that there's an infinite it's like a hologram, an infinite thing. If you can think of it, there's a reality where that exists, and you shift to it in the present moment. Retroactively, past, present, future is all one. So it's like as soon as you can put it on in consciousness that, maybe you're missing the mark on like abundance, for example, and it's like, well, Mike, scarcity is real, and like Jesus even said the lust for money is the root of all evil. And so therefore the people with the money, and then at all the rich people, it's easier for what was it, to get through an eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. So it's like you have like some of these things that are like, oh, let's push money and prosperity and abundance away. But, you have to take the broader picture of what else did Jesus say about abundance. Well, for one, those that had get more. And if you realize that abundance, the symbolic relationship of abundance and prosperity, it's still only one thing, one power being used to demonstrate that relationship. Because when you realize that, well, what is God broke? Is God a scarcity God? Well, not according to the Bible, not even according to Jesus. It's like everything that exists in creation is part of something that God owns. That's part of God. And so it's like, for me, from my perspective, when it talks about the lust, what is lust? To me, it's like, oh, that's an identity based on being separate from that demonstration. So you're sitting in the present moment, desiring, craving, trying, not realizing that you're connected with it already, not realizing that God is abundant and God is within you. So you should be expressing that abundance because you are one with love ultimately, and love is abundant. And part of like the scarcity trick is it gets you into all of these fucked up states of mind: attack, envy, jealousy, feeling sad that you don't have something, that is, you don't feel whole and complete. And that's what I believe Jesus was even alluding to. It almost is like, it gets inverted by the world, where it's just like, oh, well, money is the root of all, the lust for money is the root of all evil. And so people just hear money and evil. And I'm not saying there isn't people that are, money is an amplifier. So if you're a fucking unconscious person and you have a shitload of money, more than likely you're going to be in a fear of loss mode. Not like, oh, I'm scarce, like I don't have enough, but scarcity in the sense that, oh, I could lose this. Therefore, I need to keep it safe from danger. I need to control it. I need to wrap my arms around it. And then you start to spiral in this kind of pendulum with it, versus like you realize that it's all part of this spiritual relationship, that as you embody the end state, to bring this future heaven to the present now, as you do that, then God will reward that with a physical demonstration that because it's all spirit made flesh, so it's like the inner spirit being made flesh demonstration. It's all the same shit, so it's like you if you put money or whatever on this pedestal, like it's different than health, or it's different than a relation. It's all symbolic of this inner world. And when you really know that, then you're not in the fear about it. Ultimately, again, there's not a neutral thought. So it's like you can be in fear about it, and scarcity works both ways. It's a pendulum. Or you can create out of love and abundance, which is in giving. You give and then you receive, because we're all one, we're all connected. And so realizing that more and more, so you realize how there isn't these errant neutral thoughts. They're either thoughts of death or life. They're either fear or love. There's not an in between. And it all depends. And even the one same thought that of fear can be transmuted into love by realizing who you are in Christ, and that you're connected to all these things. So much of our fears have to do with the fact that you already believe that you're in hell, when you are not. You are in part of creation. You are connected with this divine energy, this divine creator, this infinite intelligence, and you can connect more and more so in consciousness right now by being still, by asking, most importantly, because our creator is not going to force itself onto you. ever. That's not its nature. You have to ask, and you have to ask expectantly, in a sense that I keep missing the mark. I keep and get the morality out of some of that too, because that can be triggering. It's like, just look at it as like, what are you failing at? What is the obvious weed in your garden that you're not doing correctly? It's obvious. It's like, shake out the like, oh, I'm a bad piece of shit because of this and that. It's like, stop judging yourself harshly like that. It's like, look at it in like neutral, as like the demonstration is like neutral, in the sense that it's either going to perfectly demonstrate love, or it's going to perfectly demonstrate fear. And even in those states, you can kind of transmute them a little bit. If you're in like fear, it's like, man, this is perfectly scary. You can start to realize like the inherent perfection of the suffering even, and just fully embrace it. And by fully embracing it, you almost start to transmute it. Like, by fully accepting, like, hey, I'm really in a rage right now. I'm really pissed off. And instead of like, oh, I'm a bad person because I feel like this, I'm going to just sit in this energy for a while. And as you fully embrace it and become presently angry or whatever, or sad or envious or whatever, well, then you can start to transmute it, because you're not resisting it as much. It's like, okay, well, I'm just going to sit in this state of anger for 15 minutes because I can, and fuck you, don't judge me. Okay, so then you're sitting, and it's like, how long am I going to spend like the eternal now just sitting in this energy? It kind of is not as powerful as it once was. It's like, kind of like the more I'm feeling it, the more I'm like, it's kind of just going away. And it's like, at this point, I should just choose to, I'm done with the chaos. Let's get back to like getting into a flow state, and then choosing more and more so to experience what you want, more desirable thing. And what you want, get this idea that what you want is separate from what God wants for you. Because God is within you. You wouldn't be having these desires if there wasn't a reason. Most of it because you're already depriving yourself of it. You're already like trying to like crucify yourself and flagellate yourself and abase yourself instead of loving yourself. But like the more that you're able to, like, if you don't give it to yourself in consciousness first, who's going to give it to you? Me? Am I going to give it to you? Is somebody down the street going to give it to you? I don't even know what you want. This is like, it's like you got to give it to you, and that's part of the resistance and shit, where like we can like push away, like, hey, you're blessed right now. You don't got to keep living like you're cursed. God loves you. Why do you keep thinking like that you deserve to suffer and be punished and get the undesirable and get the opposite of what you want? It's like, oh, you want to have a business, but you keep failing at it over and over again. And it's like, meanwhile, you got somebody else that's able to do it. It's like, okay, does God just hate me? Or like, why does that person get it and I don't? What are they doing that I'm not doing? It's in realizing those things. It's like, what you're doing with that other person's not doing is in faith. It's in your mind. It's like, I've noticed it so many times just with my business that like there's this period where it's like you level up in your consciousness, and like this drama and stuff of like, oh, I'm really concerned where my next customer is going to come from. Didn't you hear there's a recession? Didn't you hear that there's this going on? Didn't you fear, worst case scenario, undesirable bullshit? Instead of just going, God's my provider. And by that, it's like knowing who you are with like a calm knowing. Not a, I'm reacting because I'm scared, but just like calm knowing, like the sun will rise tomorrow. I'm going to worry about it. It'll all work out. Just that calm knowing who you are, how reality works. You don't really have much, you don't have to do much, it's just all you have to do is live in the end. And let me read this to you guys, because I think it's really, I don't say valuable, but, to me it's kind of valuable, because it's like, it's a nice reminder, especially if you're spiraling. Where did I fucking post that? I posted this thing on Twitter, I think. Maybe it was Facebook. I don't really get on Facebook besides to promote my handyman stuff, because it's more locally focused. But like, yeah, here we go. It was on Twitter. I'm not going to do a screen capture. You guys, this is what it says. Imagine for a moment your own version of a perfect future. See yourself in that future with everything you could wish for at this very moment fulfilled. Now take that memory of the future and bring it into the present. Let it influence how you will behave from this moment on. It's a Deepak Chopra. I don't know how to pronounce. I'm assuming that's a guy. I I don't know how to pronounce the name correctly, but it's like, take that vision that you have of heaven, maybe listen to some near-death experiences even. If you're really having a hard time feeling worthy of actually being blessed, or like feeling like that's something for you, so you can start changing the way you're thinking about things, get you out of that fear, even those subtle fears. There is no neutral thought, even though creation functions more like kind of like electricity. It just reliably functions the same way every time without like a judgment call. It's like if I turn a switch, the light will come on regardless of what story and narrative I'm saying. It's like, it's just how it works. And it's like, test it for yourself and you'll see for yourself how it works. But like, the more that you're able to kind of bring that heaven and these ideas that we have about God and angels and Jesus and holy things of heaven, of like, oh, we'll be great bodies, we won't be in pain or suffering, and there's no death. There's all these kind of promises. Every tear will be wiped from your eyes. These kinds of things that you hear in Revelation of what this future heaven realm is like. Well, bring that future to now, because God is in the eternal now, and the things that are true of heaven are true of right now if you are in correct relationship with your Creator. Because God doesn't change, whether it's heaven, which to me is just the absolute, the dream world, like the world we go to every day that we sleep, this realm where there is no opposites, everything's just happening at once. And it's like you'd be like walking down the street in some strange city that you've never been in, talking to strangers that you've never been in, flying for some reason, battling dragons and shit, and then next thing you know, you're on a bass boat catching a swordfish or some shit. It's like, it just is all this stuff, just these ideas that are incoherently just happening in the present moment. Bring that to the present moment. It's like to take it from the spiritual, the imagined world, the dream world, or whatever, the realm of imagination, where all things are possible for God to do, and that there is no limit. If you can imagine it, you can do it. Bring that kind of understanding where there isn't this dysfunction, that there's harmony, things are beautiful, things are just perfectly unfolding. All that big payoff moment that a lot of Christian people are like, well, I'm dedicating my entire life of in suffering for this payoff. Well, what is this payoff? So it's like listening to some of these near-death experiences, things. But, just even being still and connecting with your Creator, you can start to be introduced to these experiences now. I mean, just it's all a state of mind. To me, heaven is a state of mind that then, as you're embodying that, then it externalizes more and more so as harmony, as like the events of your life, because it's only one thing. Creation is part of a unified consciousness. Separate, like, we're all little cells in this big, this big thing, like everything, in creation is being, a reflection of God, of consciousness, and all of these different phases, all playing out these different manifesting symbolic relationships. It's awesome when you really see it, but like, I just wanted to bring that to you, your attention, hopefully, change maybe the way you're thinking, or at least make you aware when you are thinking in terms of what you don't want, aka fear, and start to move that more towards standing in faith of God or love and the desirable. It's like most of those fearful things of desire are because you're lacking it. And so if you're sitting in the present moment constantly in lack, well, don't be surprised when the mirror of reality shows you lack. It's like you have to embody that end now. And as you do, as you resonate in that kind of state and trust, ultimately, that God, infinite intelligence, is unfolding this perfectly to maximize my experiences of love and not fear, of things that feel good or compared to things that feel awful. Because once you realize that fear has torment, torment and suffering, what's the difference? So any times that you're feeling in your own being, in your own consciousness, in your own self, bad, whatever, you feel drained, you feel like you're suffering, you're listening to the wrong guide. You're listening to the old mindset that only thinks in terms of curses. Don't battle and resist it, but on some level, start working on healing your relationship with that scared child that we call the ego, that's only trying to not die, that's trying to perpetuate itself through doing a lot of things that you don't want. But, when you realize that, hey, the only thing that the ego is actually even doing is just offering me thoughts, most of which are what I don't want, compared to listening to the Holy Spirit, which is able to translate a lot of those things into love and what you do want, what you're created to experience and think. Well, it's easy then to start to extend love to it, because you realize it's just a thought. Might be a negative thought, but it's just a thought, and it's no different than a positive thought in the sense that it's just like a seed. A dandelion can be a weed or, a healthy thing. Some people drink dandelion root stuff. I've drank dandelion root shit. Does that make me healthier? I don't know. My wife seems to think so. Is she wrong? I don't think so. I think it's all based on your faith. But, ultimately, if you were trying to create a garden filled with cucumbers, though, and you plant, cucumber seeds, next thing you know, it's a week later and your total thing is filled with dandelions, well, you missed the mark. You failed at what you were attempting to do. Not saying that dandelions need to be destroyed or that you need to have some negative story about dandelions being satanic or like fucking need to be destroyed and burned in the fires of hell. And it's like, that kind of energy feeds it, for one. More than likely, if you're going to do that, you'll probably get more of what you don't want, because that's for the energy that you're fucking sitting in. But when you look at it as just like, okay, it's a dandelion, it's a weed, but it's also part of creation. This thoughts is one of the infinite thoughts I could be thinking. Instead of battling and resisting it, feeling like an off person because I had a thought, I'm just going to realize that, hey, that's just fear. It's coming from my old belief system that I'm evolving. It just needs love. Love's always the answer to fear. So it's like, let me give you energy. Let me give that thought, some energy. If it's from whatever, it's like love comes. The energy of love comes from our Creator anyway. So it's like it goes through you. So as you give to another, you become part of that same fountain. So if I'm like spraying a hose, metaphorically, like through my finger, it's like for me to actually spray the water, it's got to come through me to get to you. So it's like, okay, well, I need to shed some light on that thought. Ask infinite intelligence how to process it. You don't have to do it on your own either. And there's a reason for it, because it needs healed. The remedy is always giving love to it and not being so triggered by the contrast. It's like, oh, okay, well, I just had a thought that I'm going to get cancer and my body's going to go to shit, and I'm going to become like a vegetable. Fear, undesirable. Or, it's like, okay, well, that was a startling idea. I don't really want to experience that. But, I appreciate on some level it gives me contrast to like the healthy living that I want to do, where it's like I want to be able to breathe amazing. I want to be able to walk around and feel strong. I want to be able to pick up shit off the ground without my back hurting. It's like all these kinds of things where it's just like it helps you focus more on what you want. And if you're not battling and resisting it, like, how dare you tell me I could get cancer, I could die, I could have a heart attack, I could have a stroke, blah, blah, blah. Worst case scenario. It's like, well, how dare you? And then you become triggered by it, and then you start attacking it, which then strengthens it, which then unconsciously then will probably draw it to you. And then you experience what you don't want. Well, looking at it is just like, oh, okay, well, no, I don't like that idea. I appreciate that it exists. I'm not going to want to destroy it. I'm going to, let it be. I don't need to let it just destroy, because then I have no contrast. Then I have no, then what am I doing? Just living in a lukewarm soup? So it's changing the relationship you have to a lot of your limiting thoughts and limiting beliefs. When you take the energy out of it, realizing that, okay, that was even a subtle thing where it's just like, oh, I might just have a cramp today. Again, back to your body, because that's something kind of on the forefront of my radar or whatever, where it's like, oh, I might just have like a little bit of pain today. A little bit. It's like, it's all in those narratives. It's like, what is the pain doing? Is it strengthening you or is it decaying? because you can be sore from working out, and there's a positive story that you're telling yourself about, oh, I'm strengthening myself, no pain, no gain. Next couple of days I'll feel like $1,000,000. I'll be, able to demonstrate, like, I'd be able to bench press 200 and whatever pounds. Yeah, like there's like a funny story, actually, and this probably be the last thing before I'd go for the day, but like, when I was in jail, I've been in jail a couple times being arrested, but I actually stay in jail like for like 45 days. It was like 90 days, 3 months, but I could get out in a month and a half with good behavior. And so like what I was gonna do, when I was in there is like, I don't want to like have drama. I don't want to whatever, but I also didn't want to be victimized or whatever anyway. And so everything I did in jail, it was real basic. I'd work out all the time. I'd keep to myself. I'd talk on the phone during the same time every day. And then a lot of times I'd lock down in my cell. I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time in the day room fucking around with nobody. And that was just kind of the stuff I was into. I didn't want to gamble because there was like a lot of like gambling with soup and shit. And like, and I just didn't want the drama. And so, but, I also didn't want to look like a bitch either, and become a target. Because the first cell block I was in, it was like filled with a lot of gang people. And like towards the end of my stay in that block, I ended up getting confronted by like the leader of the gang or whatever. He wanted me to fucking join up with them, and I told him no, because it's like there's not that many of us in here, for one. For two, if I'm gonna be part of your little club or whatever, your little gang, what does that mean? That you're just gonna fucking tell me what to do? I don't think so. But like the thing of it is, it's like I wanted to kind of like work out, so it was like any of those kind of predatory types of people that wanted to try to fucking take something or be intimidating or whatever, a lot of times they won't fuck with people that are physically fit, and seem like they could put up a fight or whatever. And so like the first couple days I was in there, it's like, okay, well, I need to fucking get in shape, and if I'm going to be in here for a month and a half, I'm going to come out like stronger and fitter than when I came in. I'm going to, the food wasn't that good, and so it's like I'm going to probably be running a calorie deficit. I didn't want to buy a bunch of commissary shit for some of the same reasons. You have a bunch of commissary shit, then people get jealous and they fucking try to take shit from you, steal it from you, or extort you. It's like, oh, you got money and why don't you put some on my books? And I already had an issue where, because I wasn't broke as fuck either when I was in there. I didn't have a shitload of money, but I had people putting money on my books. I had some cash, whatever. But like I was employed. Well, I had money. Yeah, no, I wasn't employed. I can't remember. I had money, more than somebody that was indigent, but like, but the thing is, I was getting lots of envelopes and calling cards, which calling cards were like $15, and that's like a shitload of money in jail. And I was getting, and I'd carry those on my person, so if it's somebody, as opposed to keeping it in my cell in my like little plastic bin, because, fucking shady people, if you're not paying attention to your shit, will steal it from you. And something like a calling card is maybe a fighting thing, where someone might fucking try to take it from you, like physically. And so I always kept it on me. And like, same thing with like envelopes. A lot of times I'd keep the envelopes, either I'd hide the envelopes because the stamps and shit weren't super expensive, but, they were valuable to people who wanted to communicate to the outside that didn't have calling cards or envelopes, any of that shit. But like, long story short, so it's like, first get in there, it's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna start working out and shit. I was doing so many push-ups and crunches and leg lifts, and I was like walking around the cell block. I was doing like squats and burpees and all this shit. Some other guys were like kind of into that shit too. They start doing that shit. We start working out together and everything. Well, like the first like day or two, it's been so long since I'd like physically like tested myself and worked out like that. I was so fucking sore that I was like a total like there was like, if someone wanted to fuck with me, I was so sure I couldn't defend myself, because I was just like, I overdid it so much. It's like, I'm going to do 100 push-ups. I'm going to do fucking, 100 fucking crunches and all this shit, and I just way too much. But I wanted to like put out a message, like, I'm not a fucking bitch, it's like, don't fuck with me type thing. But, in doing that, I got so fucking sore that is like the smallest person in the cell block could have fucked with me. And I was like, not much I could have done, you know, because I couldn't barely even move my arms. My fucking chest was just so fucking sore. My stomach, my core, everything was so sore. It was crazy. But like, yeah, and actually, like the cell I was in had this fucking psycho in it that was like a meth dealer or whatever, and he was looking at a lot of time because he was already in his like 50s or 60s or something like that. I mean, he was like kind of an old man, but you know, kind of a fucking retard at the same time. You know, he had this like razor blade that he keep in his mouth, like in between his teeth, you know, from like shaving. You know, it was like one of those flimsy ass razors, and he kept it in his mouth and shit. And it's just like, yeah, you know, and there was some like some drama eventually with that guy, but you know, it's like again, some of the first nights I was in there, I was like, I had a hard time sleeping and shit, you know, and then I was like, I was concerned I'd get in a fight, you know, because I wasn't really, you know, there's just sometimes shit can just pop off, and it's just like, but you know, I end up like going like this. And I don't know if I just rubbed it really hard or what, but then next thing, my nose started bleeding like a bit. Like you couldn't, it was unbelievable how much my nose was just bleeding. And I was like, I start flipping out because it's like, I didn't want to get more time. And that's like another reason I didn't want to like get in a fight or anything, because I was only in there for like 45 days. And it's like, I don't want to catch another charge in here, because if you get in a fight, like where I was at, it's like, you can max out at another like 6 months. They can throw your ass in there, you know, for just extending it. And it's like, that's the last thing I want. You know, I got a family. I got a fucking, you know, I got to get out of here, you know. Yeah, and then the next thing you know, my nose was bleeding. I got blood all over my fucking like orange little shirt or whatever, just everywhere on my fucking chest. It's like, these guards aren't gonna believe that my nose is just bleeding. You know, it's like they're gonna think I got in a fight, and the next thing you'll be throwing the fucking solitary. It's just like, oh my god. Luckily, you know, they were pretty oblivious and didn't catch on, you know, but like, yeah, with that being said, I think I'm a balance. You know, I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. You know, I appreciate your spiritual support and your physical support. Thank you for that. You know, donation link in the description. Appreciate it. Put it to good use. And, you know, I appreciate your comments and everything too with those donations. I read them, you know, they're super heartfelt a lot of the times. You know, it's like, I really resonate with that. You know, I appreciate it. Appreciate you guys that did do that, guys and gals, you know, all of you. And with that being said, you know, I think I'm balanced. So until the next now, God bless.